lately I've been working within the area of safety, risk, maintenance, and reliability. And today I'm going to talk about ISRS, International Safety Rating System. Just the reason I'm based in Korea. I've been based in Korea for 2 years, the last 2 years. We're working from Busan, from our Busan office for offshore risk advisory. But I'm also supporting offshore risk advisory projects from our Seoul office. So, International Safety Rating System, I'm going to go through a little bit of the history, how it all started with International Safety Rating System, why we have ISRS, and the processes that are defined within this system, the assessment process. Maybe some of you have had already ISRS audits carried out in your company, so you have some experience on this tool. And then also how you can use ISRS to benchmark yourself with other companies. And then I'm going to talk about process safety, because we normally work with a lot of clients where you have high potential hazards, you have you have inventories which are flammable, explosive, etc. And then ISRS is addressing process safety separately, and I'm going to talk about that. And then also, how is ISRS linked to safety culture? We're going to have a presentation on safety culture this afternoon, and I'm going to explain a little bit how you can link ISRS to safety culture and what are the limitations when it comes to safety culture and ISRS. Do you hear me well, or is it okay? Okay. And then I'll say a little bit about the ISRS services and the training for ISRS and the licensing. So ISRS all started with Frank Bird. He was safety professional working in the US in the steel and insurance industry, and he investigated more than 1.75 million accidents. So he looked into what are the root causes, why are accidents happening, and he was actually, without this person we would have not had ISRS today. He established his own company called International Loss Control Institute, and this institute was acquired by DNV, and he started to recognize that in order to have fatalities, in order to have accidents, you have, as a precursor, you have a lot of near misses. So if you have a lot of near misses, it will eventually lead to an accident and fatalities. And that's what we call the Bird triangle today, named after Frank Bird. It's this triangle where you have a lot of near misses on the bottom, leading up to catastrophic fatalities on the top of the triangle. So he was discovering this ratio. That the risk rate is not an exact ratio, but it's sure that if you have a lot of near misses, then you will eventually have fatalities. But the key point is not to have, the key point is not the ratio. The key point is that you can learn a lot from the near misses and prevent the big accidents. So if you're putting a lot of time into investigating why you have near misses, then you can prevent the big accidents. And he's also the person who established what we also use today is the loss causation model. The loss causation model is basically saying that, okay, you have a technical cause of an accident, but there are root causes as well. So a technical cause could be that you have a leak in a flange or a leak in a gasket, and then why do you have a leak in the flange or why do you have a leak in the gasket, and then, okay, you have improper installation of the gasket. Why did you have improper installation of the gasket? Okay, you didn't have instructions how to do it. Why didn't you have that? Okay, so you basically identifying the root causes. Why didn't you have a procedure for doing it? Okay, then you need to have a procedure for doing it, etc. So it's linking basically the causes for why things are happening to management system, to lack of management system, the lack of control, lack of procedures. And this was established, so 38 years ago was established this international safety rating system. And this has been, it's not been static, 38 years ago, ISRS was completely different to what it is today. Today, it's been growing in size, basically. ISRS has been growing and growing and growing, and consisting of more and more processes and more standards. Today, it's covering safety, security, environmental, quality, business processes, economic loss. It's covering process safety. So it's covering a lot more today than it's covered 38 years ago. So today we have ISR, the latest version of ISRS is ISRS 8. There is the ISRS 9 under development, which is going to include social responsibility and energy management. So 2 additional elements. So this is kind of the evolution of ISRS. It's just growing and growing in size, covering more and more areas, and it means that it's, if you have energy management, that's one of your key topics, then ISRS will be able to address that. Or if you have corporate social responsibility as one of your key topics, then ISRS will be able to address that as well in ISRS 9, the next version, under development. So we see here that ISRS has been through an evolution from 1978 until where it is today in ISRS 8 in 2009. There are a lot of standards being covered. Some of the standards as a result of big catastrophic accidents like Seveso in Italy. So a lot of the accidents have created new standards, new regulations, new ways, new practices in terms of safety management. And all of that has been fed into the ISRS as it is today. So the value proposition of ISRS is a leading system to assess, improve, and demonstrate the health of an organization's business processes. So it could be that you feel that you have lack of management system and control, and you would like an assessment. That could be one starting point, but a starting point could also be that you feel confident that you have all your systems and processes in place. You just need to demonstrate it. So in a way, you're getting DNVGL in to do an ISRS audit to demonstrate that actually, yeah, you are quite good. You have management system processes. It's like an independent assessment saying that actually, yeah, you manage it well. So we have both. We have clients coming to us that wants to demonstrate they're good, and we have clients coming to us to say, we need help. Can you do an assessment, and then we want to see what kind of recommendations you have for improving our safety. So it gives organizations and stakeholders peace of mind that the operations are safe and sustainable. Kind of, if you can, because this is covering so much, and if you have a comprehensive ISRS audit carried out in your company, and you get a good result, then you can also demonstrate and show to your shareholders and stakeholders and board of directors, whoever, that look, we had an ISRS audit. ISRS is very comprehensive, covers a lot of international standards, and result is good. Or you could say, result is good, but here are the improvement areas that we need to work on. So ISRS is a management system, a framework of controls to manage key processes, organizational risk, and drive continuous improvement. So it drives also behavior, and behavior is a key thing, because if you have a lot of, say, permit to control system, if you have a lot of, safe job analysis, you have management of change process, you have pre-inspection checklists, you have a lot of procedures, but that actually doesn't help you because people don't follow it anyway, and then you have a problem. So you need to have all the processes, but when we're doing ISRS audit, we are also checking to which degree this is actually implemented. And you can use this ISRS to drive behaviors. You can say that actually we have the processes, we're not following it, and you can use this to make sure that people are actually complying to your procedures. Because we are conducting a lot of interviews, we are having interviews with management, kind of intermediate management, technicians, from top to down. We are having interviews, and we can check the level of compliance at all levels. So, if you look at the number of companies using ISRS today, it's a huge number. But what you also see that there is a huge variation in type of companies using ISRS. You have BP, like an oil company, ConocoPhillips oil company. You have Orkla, is a food company. So, and you have telecom companies, you have Siemens manufacturing, you have steel, SBM Offshore making FPSOs, drilling companies. You have a huge range of different types of companies. And every type of companies will have a different interest. So maybe like a communication IT company will be more concerned about security than process safety. So you can choose ISRS. ISRS is flexible, so you can choose to focus on the processes that are important for your company. And you can actually disregard some of the processes if you think they are not relevant. So typically, like the oil, like high hazardous industry, if you are working in, say, refining or petrochemicals, high hazardous, high potential for explosions and fires, then you would typically focus on process safety and safety in general, also environmental, but maybe manufacturing industry will focus more on, say, corporate social responsibility or environment, and less on process safety. Yeah. But you can choose. ISRS is flexible, so you can choose to focus on what is important for you. And also, one thing that is important is that if you are a relatively small company, then you don't want a lot of procedures. You don't want a massive management system if you are a small company. you're a small company, you want kind of just the minimum to make it efficient. If you are, say, if you are a nuclear power station, you need a lot of procedures because the nuclear power station is associated with high risk. You need to have a lot of controls. Any nuclear disaster can also be disaster for the public, and you have big contamination of big areas potentially. So then you need to have emergency response, emergency preparedness procedures. You need to have a lot of systems and processes and controls. But if you are relatively small companies, relatively low risk, then you shouldn't kill yourself with management systems and processes and procedures. So you need to scale your management system to the level of risk and the size of your company. And so that means that when you want ISRS audit done, we are not just saying, we'll give you this ISRS audit. We need to have a discussion on what is the right ISRS audit for your company, and we'll scale it accordingly. Another main reason here for doing ISRS is that here is a company, it's a French company that operates on terminals, and you see that there is definitely the right trend on this is low severity accidents, medium severity accidents, and high severity accidents. So we see that over time, if you're implementing ISRS, accidents will go down, near misses will go down. You can see it's going a little bit up and down, but the general trend is clear here. In particular on the high severity accidents, you can see that very good performance. So this is the main reason why a lot of companies are doing ISRS, is to see a change in trend for an accident, to reduce the number of accidents. And those processes here, so leadership, planning, risk evaluation, human resources, compliance assurance, project management, training and competence, communication, risk control, asset management, contractor management, emergency preparedness, learning from events, risk monitoring, results and review. Those processes have stayed the same for the last, since we had ISRS 7 and ISRS 8. Those processes are the same. They have not changed. ISRS 6 had a little bit different processes, but those processes, and I'm actually expecting, or we are expecting, that those processes will also stay the same in ISRS 9, which means that those processes are the core. Even if we are adding more like corporate social responsibility, if we are adding energy management, you will still have those processes. Same processes. So we are considering those processes as the most critical for your business processes, the most critical to succeed in safety, environment, whatever it is. It's universal. And then you have the continuous improvement, and more importantly, you have the risk management. So you have risk evaluation, risk control, and risk monitoring, which is kind of the key backbone of the ISRS tool. And then you have a lot of standards that are covered by ISRS. So if you are, I'm assuming maybe you have some ISO certifications, you can actually combine ISRS and ISO certification audits. If you want to avoid having too many audits, you can have ISRS and ISO certification at the same time. Normally when we are doing ISRS, we are doing that as an advisory service, so we can do an audit and then we can help you after to improve and help you develop your management system and your procedures. If we are also delivering certification, say if we are delivering ISO 9001 certification or 14001 certification to you, then we need to be careful in doing advisory because of conflict of interest. But generally speaking, if we are only doing ISRS, there's no problem for us to do advisory. Actually, ISRS is an advisory service, not third-party certification service. So you can see that there are a lot of standards covered through ISRS. And the assessment process itself, like I said, we need to tailor the audit to your needs. ISRS is not just one, two, or one set of questions. We can select some areas that you feel is more relevant for you. If you feel that process safety is the most relevant, along with maybe risk control, risk evaluation, then we can adjust the protocol to cover what is exactly right for you. And then normally we set up, this is happening, the audit is happening over a 1 week period where we have interviews with people at all levels in the organization, relevant people. We're collecting evidence, so we are looking at documentation, we're looking at procedures. We have quite a well-defined scoring system, and the questions are always the same. And the reason why the questions are always the same is that we then can benchmark. If we are asking the same questions to all companies, then, and we have the same way of collecting data, the same way of scoring companies, then we can benchmark your companies with other companies in the same business. Or other companies in a different business as well. So if you are working for a refinery, we can benchmark your performance, say, within risk control or human resources with similar companies in upstream industry or petrochemical or whatever. We have a huge database of scores of different companies. Of course, it's all anonymized. We will not share the score of other companies with you. It will be just company A, B, C, D, E, F, etc. But you will be able to see your score compared to industry average, and I'll show you an example later on that. And then we also do, if we do the process safety, we will do a physical inspection of your safety systems and your barriers. And then you can choose if you want to have an award level. Award level is a score between 1 and 10. So 1 is the weakest and 10 is the strongest. But actually we prefer to talk about an appropriate award level, because again, it depends on the size of your company and it depends on the level of risk involved. So normally nuclear power plants would aim for maybe having a level 9 or 10, because it's a high risk industry. They need to have a high level of control and a strong management system. If you have a low risk company with lower risk, then you can have maybe aim more for a award level 5 or 6 or 7, but not 10. But you don't have to aim for an award level. You can choose to do an ISRS audit with a very limited scope, just to have some assessment of an area of concern or whatever. And then at the end of the audit, normally on the last day, we present results, our initial kind of observations in terms of improvement areas and noteworthy efforts. We will also tell you where we think you are good, where we think you are performing well. And then there will be a report summarizing the audit and your score within the processes that we have assessed within a couple of weeks after that. So here is just some examples of the why benchmarking. You may ask yourself the questions, how are we as a company doing compared to other companies? So you could compare yourself to, if you are a refinery in Korea, you could compare yourself to another refineries in Korea, or you could compare yourself on refineries in general on a global basis. So maybe you're asking yourself, are we good compared to others? How do we stand when compared to world class? And how can you demonstrate again to stakeholders that you're actually quite good? So if you can demonstrate that you are better than the average to stakeholders, to board of directors, to employees, then that's a good thing. And also, of course, to identify some strengths and weaknesses within specific areas. Maybe you have a weakness within, say, risk monitoring. Maybe you have some weakness compared to other companies within a specific area. And this is an example of benchmarking. So this is a company, this is not a real company, we're just calling it ACME. And you see the yellow dot here is actually ACME's performance within the different processes, so leadership, planning, etc. So you see that in this case, industry average is the gray line. So in this case, this ACME company is better than average in all areas. And this is something we can provide to you. We can show you where you are compared to industry average. Another thing you can see here is that the standard deviation is quite big in some areas. Standard deviation on risk monitoring is huge, going from almost 0 to 100. So some people have almost nothing in place. Some companies have almost nothing in place when it comes to risk monitoring, and some companies have this perfect in order. Whereas in human resources, the standard deviation is smaller. So, just a general trend that we have seen in recent years is that occupational safety, personal safety has improved gradually. Take from 1992, this graph is showing different companies, including DuPont, Bayer, etc., lost time injuries. You can see lost time injuries is going down. So the general trend for personal safety is going in the right direction. I don't know if that is the case for Korea, but I assume maybe also the case. I hope you're going in the right direction in Korea in general. Any thoughts on that? Is Korea going in the right direction? Or is it going in the wrong direction? I know there's a lot of fatalities in heavy construction, offshore oil and gas, and shipping, maritime. I think there's definitely room for improvement, but I don't know the facts. I don't know if the trend is going in the right direction or not. When it comes to major accident risks, so process safety, and then we're talking about fires, explosions, fatalities, big accidents. There are a lot of statistics showing that we are actually improving a little bit, but not significantly. So that means you still have big accidents. You still have explosions, you still have fires. You know, you had Fukushima as a big accident, and those accidents are still occurring. So there is some reason for concern on that. And this accident, the Texas refinery, killed 15 people, and was kind of a wake-up call for BP owning this refinery. There was a report after this accident, a Baker panel report, where they pointed out that actually this refinery celebrated their good performance within safety on the same day as the accident happened. They celebrated they were good in safety, and then this happened. And the problem was that they celebrated only one side of safety. They celebrated that they were good in personnel safety. They had low rate of injuries. But actually, they were not good in process safety. So they were measuring injuries, but they didn't measure, had good lag and lead indicators for process safety, for big accident risk type of safety. And what can you measure when it comes to big accident kind of safety? That is the question. Because it's maybe easy to measure how often people get injured, but how can you measure this? It doesn't happen that very often, so obviously the counting all the times you're going to have this is not going to help you a lot. But one lead indicator that you should have, if you don't have it, you should have it and you should implement it, is to measure the number of leaks you have. If you have a gas leak, then that is potentially a major accident, because it's just the only thing that is missing if you have a gas leak is ignition, and then you have explosion. So you should measure the number of gas leaks, and you should also measure to which degree you are complying with your, say, isolation procedures, to which degree you are complying with your safe working procedures when you're doing operation and maintenance. So there are things that you can measure. You can measure to which degree your safety systems are working, to which degree your gas detectors are working, to which degree your H2S detectors are working. You can measure to which degree your fire pumps are working. So you can measure corrosion in your plant. So there are things you can measure in terms of process safety to avoid this issue. So I talked about the bird pyramid. So industrial. So you're talking about injuries, and you have this pyramid of one serious injury or fatality, and you have a lot of near misses related to that. But that is not the same as the process safety. You need to have a different focus to measure your process safety performance. So that's what we call the major hazard paradigm. Because the big accidents are a little bit like there's a terminology called the black swan. The black swan is something that happens, it's extremely unlikely, but a huge consequence. Examples of black swan incidents could be Fukushima or 11th of September. Now, they have two airplanes crashing into the World Trade Center in the US. Nobody thought that could happen. Nobody thought that was in a credible scenario. It's a black swan scenario. Or to have a tsunami coming in and hitting a nuclear power station probably was also not something that was considered as the scenario. So when you're doing your risk assessment of your plant, think about the things that are extremely unlikely, but also disastrous, and make sure you have designed against any possible catastrophic scenario. And the process safety management in ISRS is covering all of this. It's covering process safety leadership, management of change, asset integrity management, process safety information, process hazard analysis, operating procedures, process safety in projects, and pre-start safety review. And this is part of ISRS 8. So if you are running ISRS 7 in your company, process safety is not part of it. Process safety was implemented into ISRS after Texas safety. And unfortunately, it's often like that when big accidents happen, then suddenly the industry is learning from that and is learning too late, but it's never too late. You can always do it after accidents, but of course it's better to learn or have the systems in place before the accidents are happening. So the other thing I would like to emphasize is the importance of safety culture and process safety. If you have a refinery and the person sitting in the control room and can shut down the plant, he is extremely important. And actually, what is important is that you need to give the authority to the person sitting in the control room to shut down the plant if there is an unsafe situation. Because what we've seen from the past is that if you had a big offshore accident called Piper Alpha, and actually the control room on one installation was feeding gas to the fire on a different installation, and they could see the fire. They could see the fire happening, they could see there was a big catastrophe, but they didn't have the authority to shut down the feed of the gas. So they were continuously feeding more gas to the fire, but they didn't shut down because no authority. So you need to give authority, you need to give a mandate to your people sitting in the control room to shut down the process. Because you may have a gas leak, you may have a fire, but there is no automatic shutdown. If there's no automatic shutdown, the people need to have authority to shut down. And there's no punishment for shutting down. It's like, and the same in Deepwater Horizon, there were a lot of warning signals that some blowout could happen, but nobody felt they had the authority to stop. So safety culture is all about management delegating authority and a mandate to prioritize safety, and that is safety culture. I'm not sure if you've seen the film Sully, about the pilot who landed the airplane on the Hudson River. How many have seen the movie? Nobody? Seen the movie? So, in that film, there is an investigation because the pilot landed on the river, not at the airport. Why did he just not? Because the simulators showed that he could actually have landed at the airport, no problem. And then at one kind of tipping point, at one tipping point in the movie, there's a hearing, and he's saying, and they're showing that he could have landed at the airport, and he's saying, you forgot about one thing, and that's human factors. So there's always a human factor there is a delay in people's reaction time, and he got an additional 30 seconds, and the additional 30 seconds showed that landing on the airport was not possible. So the reaction time is extremely important for mitigating the consequences of accidents. And again, the people sitting in the control room, sitting in the cockpit, wherever they're sitting, where there's a big influence on risk, they need to have authority, and they need to take into account that there will be a delay in reaction. People will not automatically shut down. People will not automatically make the appropriate actions. So we are talking about risk competence. And when it comes to risk competence, the first thing you need to think about is the risk perception. People have a perception of the risk. We went to Paris on vacation this summer, and this was right after the terrorist attack in Paris. And the immediate feeling is that we shouldn't go to Paris. That's a risky place. You can get killed by terrorists. But that is your perception. If you actually look at the statistics, the likelihood of getting killed by a terrorist is extremely low. So actually the risk perception is high, but the actual risk is low in general for terrorist attacks, because terrorist attacks are in the media at all times. And then when you're taking a plane, your risk perception is that this is a high risk to sit on a plane. Statistics showing that it's actually extremely low risk to sit on a plane. Even though plane accidents happen, like now just recently in Colombia we had a plane accident. But the risk perception is that this is a high risk, but the actual facts showing is low risk. And sometimes the actual risk is matching the perceived risk. If you're thinking about the risk of getting cancer, actually the perception is approximately the same as the true risk. So people think it could happen that you get cancer, and the actual risk is approximately the same. So it's very different. And then you have the risk acceptance. And the risk acceptance is actually, if you're thinking about wearing a helmet when you're biking, do you accept the fact that you can fall off the bike and hit your head and die? If you accept the fact, then that's kind of the first thing. And for all your employees, it's the same. If you're going to the site, if you accept the fact that you're going to the site that you can have dropped object falling on your head, if your employees accept that fact, then you have achieved one thing. If you get their acceptance. So start with try to get their acceptance of that. And then the next thing you want to get from them is commitment. Once they have accepted the fact, then you want their commitment to wear the helmet. And wearing a helmet is quite easy. You don't need any competence to do that. The only thing is, put it on and that's it. But you have some areas where some knowledge and skills is required as well. Like if you want to do some quality checks on fall arrest system, the harness fall arrest systems, to check if there's no defects on the fall arrest system, you need some competence to do that. Or if you're going to do a pre-inspection, pre-use inspection of a crane, you need some competence to do that. So sometimes you also need competence. But if you can get the competence right, making sure that people are competent, follow procedures, if you can get their acceptance, and then in addition to that get their commitment, then we're talking about a good safety culture. And to check people are accepting or are committed, we're not doing that in ISRS. ISRS is not checking your commitment. ISRS is not checking your acceptance. But what you can do is to check which processes in ISRS are critical for safety, like doing pre-use inspection on the cranes as an example. If that is critical for safety, you can check people's acceptance and commitment and competence to do that. So in ISRS we have a lot of tools. Some of them will have in modern safety management, which is a course. Maybe some of you have taken modern safety management. And you have incident investigation, checklist, safety benchmarking, we have leadership training, we have global ISRS practitioner network. So almost any part of the world we can do ISRS. We have ISRS practitioners in Africa, in the US, in Far East, in Europe, in Australia. So wherever we have a network of ISRS specialists. Then we have the Book of Knowledge. Alpha Assessment is a light version of the ISRS. Synergy Life is our tool for safety in DNV. And then ESCAT is a tool to do root cause analysis and failure investigation. So there's a whole range, beyond just the ISRS protocol, there's a whole range of tools that comes along with it. And we have training, we're doing regular modern safety management training, also in Seoul. We have, also you can be qualified to become an ISRS assessor. So you can be part of the assessing your own organization. You can be an ISRS champion within your own company and be an assessor and take the ISRS training. We have ISRS training in different places. Just ask us and we'll find out where the next course is held. And we have an ISRS license scheme. So depending on the size of the company, there is a different fee for the ISRS license. And you get access to all the editions of ISRS. You get access to the ISRS software, the Book of Knowledge, and also you get reduced fee to attend ISRS conferences and other events related to ISRS. So a lot of advantages. There's some statement of what clients are saying about ISRS. And here, through measurements carried out using these ISRS tools, we can show politicians, regulators, and stakeholders that we were continuing to improve. This is BHP Petroleum. So this is typically a client who wants to demonstrate the performance, demonstrate that they're actually quite good in safety. And this one, put simply, this ISRS system is a tool which helps us establish, develop, and improve our management system. So this is a client who's looking more at continuous improvement, commitment to improve, never satisfied. Actually, that's a good thing, never be satisfied. That's a very good starting point. If you're satisfied, you shouldn't be satisfied. Because if you're satisfied, it means you will not improve. So companies who are never satisfied will excel. Companies never satisfied will outcompete others. So this company actually, I will come back to it, they achieved ISRS award level 8, which is very unique. This is the project, BADAC, LNG plant. And they were the first company to achieve ISO level 8 worldwide. So this is, they've done very well. Okay, that was my last slide.